Hey, what's up guys? Cameron here from Drums and Drams, and today I've got two quick bourbon recommendations for you. Both of these bottles have absolutely shocked me in recent weeks, and while they're not the cheapest whiskeys on the market, both coming in at around $100, which is part of the reason I was skeptical to begin with, once I got them home, cracked them open, nosed them, tasted them, I couldn't be more surprised by the profile and by the quality of both of these whiskeys, and today I wanted to highlight them for you. If $90 or $100 is within your price range and you're looking for something a little bit different, you might consider picking these up. I'm gonna nose them and taste them very quickly, talk about why I like them, and then get you on your way. We're gonna start in this corner with the Pinhook 8-year from the Vertical series that they do. This is coming in at 114.6 proof or 57.3% ABV. And look, on the surface, this is 8-year batched MGP. At $90, it's not the greatest value on paper, but the fact of the matter is, this is off-profile MGP. It hits above its pay grade and above its proof point. It actually drinks a little hot. In this case, that's kind of a welcome thing because it has a nice spicy profile. But I find on batched MGP products that there's typically a few different avenues you go down, whether it's citrus forward, whether it's kind of this cinnamon burnt orange, maybe more herbal on the higher rye side of things. But it's rare to find, even with single barrels of MGP, a bourbon that gets into root beer territory, maple, brown sugar. These are more Kentucky notes. And that's one of the reasons I like this Pinhook, is that not only do you get some classic MGP, bourbon notes in this batch, but you also get a lot of Kentucky-friendly notes, which is why I think it's going to appeal to a lot of different kinds of drinkers, but again, only if you're in it for this $90 price point. So let's go ahead and nose it very quickly. Yeah, I just love this spicy maple syrup note here, spicy maple pie crust. That's the first thing that jumps out of the glass. It's chocolatey, maybe even a little bit of espresso. And that root beer note. It's such a special note for me in a whiskey when you find root beer or root beer float, when you kind of get that added vanilla in there, sarsaparilla. These notes, again, I don't find them often on batched MGP. It's gotta be kind of a funky one-off single barrel or a specialty thing here or there. The fact that Pinhook has captured this profile, 8 years old, I know it's $90, I think it's very, very cool. On the palate now, cheers. It's just delicious freaking whiskey. The palate development is so supported by this spice profile. Yes, big flavors, big maple, brown sugar, cinnamons, pie crusts, root beer. But the spice on here helps the development so much as it goes from front to back. A nice lingering finish. Again, I think it drinks over its 114.6 proof. So highly, highly recommend this Pinhook 8-year Vertical series. And from this point forward, I'm not looking past these Pinhook bottlings, especially in this Vertical series. I can't wait to get my hands on the next one, the 9-year. So let's now move over to what I think is probably the most surprising whiskey for me in the last year, maybe even more than that. That is this Jefferson's Tropics. And Jefferson's is not a brand that I'm very familiar with, not very fond of. It's very expensive stuff. It's not transparent, typically low proof. And there are just some crazy releases, and I never really know what I'm looking at when I see these weird finishings and barrels and whatever the case may be. I know Jefferson's has kind of built their reputation on some of their older bottlings when they had super old sourced whiskey that they were putting out maybe right before or right at the beginning of the bourbon craze. Those things go for many, many hundreds of dollars on the secondary market now. But the current day Jefferson's, I'm always skeptical. I'm always looking past it until I heard about Jefferson's Tropics. Someone said it could be wild turkey sourced. I have no confirmation of that, but that at least piqued my interest. I looked at the price point. I was, kind of back and forth about it, decided to pick the bottle up, and I am so happy that I have this whiskey, and it's one that I might even go snag a backup of. I don't think they're gonna be flying off shelves necessarily, but I believe in this whiskey that much. The gimmick here, or what appears to be a gimmick, is that it spent time, these barrels, on a ship. I think it went to Singapore, it came back, it aged in this kind of tropical, very humid climate. And the tagline on the bottle saying aged in humidity is kind of a hilarious thing to put on a bottle. It had an impact here. And so I think if you're gonna have something that looks gimmicky, like the Voyages, in this case the Tropics as well, you really need to deliver in the flavor profile of the whiskey something that is so clearly different that people can believe that there was a tangible impact from what you're saying you did to that whiskey. And in this case, it totally delivers. It's at 104 proof or 52% ABV. Let's take a quick nose here. Oh my God. Again, the rumor that it's wild turkey sourced. I have zero idea if that's true, but when you go into this glass, you can totally believe it. It has that Russell's single barrel kind of nose to it, cherry and cinnamon notes up front, red fruit and cinnamon. It's super, and I mean super oaky for this Jefferson's Tropics. And the only way that I can imagine that that's happened is from, yes, the humidity and probably like the sloshing of the barrels and the interaction with the wood. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell exactly what these barrels went through, but the amount of oak on the nose with these huge cherry cinnamon notes is just kind of astounding. In a lot of cases, when you have an older whiskey, and for the Tropics, we don't know what the age is on here. I don't even think we know a range of ages. I don't think we have any idea. But when you have an older whiskey and you get a lot of oak, you can either go down like funky oak territory, which is kind of like Knob Creek. You can go down sweet oak, the sweet oak path, Buffalo Trace, even like some Michter's products, even some Heaven Hill. Heaven Hill kind of rides the line between the two. A lot of times that comes from age. And for the Tropics, it's very surprising to me how the oak appears on the nose. It's a young oak on the nose, but not in a way that makes you think like, ooh, that's off-putting, or it's like walking into the lumber section of a store or something. It's not like that. It's not like a double-barreled oak from these younger whiskeys that get thrown into a second barrel to just try to cover up that, young grain profile and get it onto the market for $80. It's not that. I've never really had a whiskey with the oak profile of this Jefferson's Tropics. It's so intense. Pungent is a little bit of a strong word, but it kind of lines up. But this oak is the star of the show, with cherry cinnamon notes, with leather notes, with big baking spices, not quite to the level that the Pinhook had, maybe not quite in the same way. I think it is amped up. And at 104 proof, it might even nose over the proof of the 114 from the Pinhook. And I think that's just because there, again, so much oak spice on the nose of this whiskey. Fantastic. Let's get it on the palate now. Absolutely outstanding. There was a teeny little young cornbread note on the palate. It's definitely kind of like a toasted, almost burnt cornbread kind of note. Not entirely corn grain, which is good. If you get that kind of a note, it really screams young whiskey. It's kind of unpleasant. This does show a teeny bit of youth with this toasted cornbread note, but it's not an issue. I mean, I don't feel like when I drink this whiskey that I'm drinking a gimmick. I feel that with a lot of other whiskeys that I've tried, overpriced. Again, $100 for this Tropics. It's not cheap. I get it. I think you would be hard pressed to find another whiskey in your collection that tastes similar to this Tropics, that has the same drinking experience. It's remarkable stuff. And it really has to do with the way that the oak has impacted this whiskey. I don't know if I've given enough notes on this, if I've just kind of diving into too much detail about the nerdy side. I don't know if this was helpful or not with the Tropics, but if you get a bottle of this, revisit this review. Let me know what you think. If I'm kind of getting close on this whiskey, it's hard to describe if you're not nosing it, if you're not tasting it for yourself, because again, it's a little bit of a singular experience for me. I haven't had a whiskey quite like it. And also, if you had the chance to try this Pinhook 8-year, let me know that in the comment section as well. That is gonna do it. Again, 2 bourbon recommendations. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let me know if you've tried either of these and what you think. Cheers, and I will see you next time here on Drums and Drams.